Hello, I'm Gus Zagarella, and we are not alive. How's your day going, Henry?
I was playing some Yandere Simulator earlier today. Let me tell you, Osana is a really challenging boss. After that, I'm thinking of maybe watching some Growing Around or checking out Season 2 of Demo Reel.
I see that you have taken Simulator to its logical conclusion in that you are, within your mind, simulating the idea that these projects you mentioned were ever finished or presented to the world in an acceptable state.
Today we're here to talk about three different creators and their most infamous projects. That is Yandere Simulator by Alex Mahan, aka YandereDev, Growing Around by the mysterious Mr. Enter, and a fusion of Demo Reel and Pop Quiz Hotshots by the one, the only, the rememberer Nostalgia Critic Doug Walker.
The reason we're doing this is twofold. Number one, we're a creative advice channel generally, and we want to give people some feedback on how they can avoid taking some of the pitfalls of some of these other projects. But number two, I think just as a general community service to the world, people have lost money funding these people's projects. So avoiding things like this in the future by recognizing the signs early on is something that we can give to the world so that they have a taxonomy on where they can save a few of their hard-earned bucks.
Shall we start with the King Kuma himself, YandereDev?
An extremely infamous man, prolific only in the amount that he overshares on the internet about the minutiae of his life, which seems to consist of jumping from one very common anime-esque fetish to the next.
And fighting off what appears to be, from his telling, an endless barrage of emails.
The man is locked in an end-of-the-movie climactic battle with the Bolivian army, except the bullets are troll comments.
If you clicked on this, you know who YandereDev is. He attempted to make a game that was a stealth-based, Yandere-themed stab-em-up, where the objective is to hunt down your love rivals, isolate them and kill them, then hide the body and get away with it. And I will say, up top, as we were sort of discussing off mic, Gus, I do not think this is a bad idea for a game. You know, I was brought up on, like, murder simulators like Manhunt and Manhunt 2, which was inexplicably on the Nintendo Wii. So I'm here for, like, weird, dark, kind of edgy stealth games, but the execution, ooh, left a fair bit to be desired.
Yeah, because that's the thing. It's like the tone that this presents is not unprecedented, especially in, like, you know, the sort of online indie developed game world. There's always been stuff like Corpse Party and things like Mirai Nikki that were like very bizarre, strange sort of psychosexual experiences. And the yandere trope is something that has lingered on in present consciousness to the modern day in anime. So this would be a slam dunk were it not for the creator of it. And I say creator incredibly loosely because could you call this a creation?
To give the devil his due on this, there were some beta versions of the game that saw the light of day, because the very reason that most people who aren't on FBI watch lists know about this is that the beta was played by like a bunch of popular streamers back in the day, most notably Markiplier and PewDiePie, and this exposed them to huge swaths of the internet audience, and I think got a lot of attention on the creator's Patreon. There was a brief period where he was working with the creators of... It's called Hello Neighbor, but I nearly said Don't Tell Uncle, which is the name of an Indian restaurant near where me and Meg live. It just has a very bizarre, sinister name.
See, I thought you were going to call that game by the name Hello MatPat, because that seemed to be what all the marketing implied.
I'm sure MatPat will enjoy dissecting every frame of this.
So we meme, we joke, but literally that dev team would have been the perfect perfect people to help bring Yandere Simulator, like, you know, continue its niche of being like a stream game with like, you won't believe what outrageous thing streamer A yells about in this one. And that could have been a really good way to keep the game alive and to earn its funding. But then YandereDev, as many people are wont to do, verbed in the form of his own name all over it.
There were obviously the kind of revelations of his very seedy past under the name Ava Zephon, which you can find out more about in the June the King documentary on it. We're not going to go too deep into it here, but the dude had some... I think to say he had some skeletons in his closet doesn't quite sum it up. It's like if you opened his closet, you'd be walking into like the Paris catacombs, where it's really more bone than rock at this stage.
That's the thing. It's like there's a certain type of very public online self-proclaimed gooner who has the like public persona, and then there is the like you go into the wardrobe and you find the Paris catacombs, and then you find like pervert Narnia, where like the secret second level is revealed. It's like that guy Grooms, who I believe is like a culture war dude.
Don't even know
was
about
like
him.
So he was like he's quite a character. It's been revealed that he had a secret identity as Debbie Chan, the matron of a like a saucy, violent catfight website with some very severe kind of stuff. And anyway, it's similar to this YandereDev thing of, wow, you know, we knew you were adjacent to that because you were doing anime schoolgirls and they were killing each other and it's like, you know, violent and stuff. But we didn't need to know everything. We didn't need to know all of the facts. It's one of those things where even somebody with the standards that YandereDev holds himself to in public, which are not many, there is still this sense of shame that conceals the past. And that is something that I think is very fascinating, because it's like, you would think someone who is making something like this would be shameless, would have no skeletons, or at the very least, all of their skeletons would be bleached in the sun, airing out for eternity. But somehow there are more.
Weirdness finds a way, it seems, but you can still be a, like, massive freakazoid and get games finished. I mean, look at how Blizzard's been running for the past 20 years. It seems to have basically been like a criminal enterprise, but they still released a pair of Overwatches, so I guess you gotta give them that. But
exactly.
The thing with him is, the issues that ended up collapsing the game were less conceptual, which we'll be getting into a bit more when we discuss Mr. Enter, Doug Walker, and frankly some of our own failed projects, which we are man enough to admit and to tell you about, and we're sure you'll enjoy hearing about how bizarre and cringeworthy they were later, if you're patient and eat your vegetables first.
Exactly. We'll be doing that one last, because it's the reward for getting through all the... Is it a reward, or is it a dessert? I don't know.
For some people, dessert is a reward.
Continue.
But yeah, with YandereDev, it really is his interpersonal sort of problems that tanked this thing, because he had a promising concept. He had this real groundswell of support, both with finance and with the press it was getting from all of these streamers and all of the sort of both anime and like niche indie games fans who were like, let's see how this goes, who might have been more casual viewers of the whole thing. But he got so addicted to crowd surfing that he began to focus more on throwing in Easter eggs and these like strange little features like Attack on Titan based like giant woman mod modes, and I believe from the excellent Kappa Kaiju series that breaks down the terrible production of the game, that he even put a huge amount of effort into completely developing the lore of the in-universe anime that exists and is watched by some of the characters, which to me perfectly illustrates someone who has absolutely piss poor time and resource management skills.
Yeah, that is a like ballooning of scope that is really, really upsetting when you put it in the context of, but is the game out yet? Why are you already making all of the DLC and some ideas for spin-offs and filling out the wiki when you have not yet made a full build of your game?
Feature creep is one of the most insidious factors in a lot of this stuff.
You could almost sum up Yandere Simulator and YandereDev as feature creep and creepy features.
Yes! No, it's so true, because another one of the things that held it back, without getting too crass about it, was his insistence on what could have been like a pretty solid stealth horror game if someone who was less of a huge weirdo was behind it. Was he made taking creep shots of your classmates a major feature in this game. And when Twitch, who, not a perfect company, but I'll stand with them on thinking, hey, maybe we don't want this on here, he was like, no, this is immovable. I am dying on the hill of you getting to be like a dirty old man with a mirror on the bottom of his walking stick, looking up people's skirts. It's intrinsic to the game.
Now, we're not the people who are like, you shouldn't like go all in on like fetish content in your thing if that's the kind of artistic vision you have. But there are consequences for doing so. We recently covered Bora Bora Honeymoon, which is a great example of what it is, but that exists on YouTube because it has a tagged for adults thing. It's a 18 plus video. Likewise, our audio dramas, both the Kingmaker Histories and Kill Jam Triple X, have sexual themes and violence and things at different times, but these are not on a platform where A, they wouldn't have like show notes explaining that this was the case, and B, a bigger corporation is going to decide to take away the opportunity to stream it and go viral. And I think that what this comes down to is, if you're making the Markiplier and PewDiePie yell at your game, you should probably make sure that they can still do that and get monetized and get something out of it.
Exactly. It's kind of how the handshake of this whole thing works. And yeah, like Gus was saying, we really approve of, as long as we're keeping it legal, fellas, and preferably not weird and skeevy in a bad way, we very much approve of self-expression of all kinds, and we think that people should be given the right to sort of pursue their artistic vision and then let the audience decide whether it's something they want to uplift or not. But with YandereDev, it's this whole problem of he put all of his energy into the wrong fights. And his insistence of making every stage of this public resulted in these really bizarre feedback loops that ended up with him spending more time, like, sparring with what would be his own future audience than actually getting his arse in gear and putting the meaningful foundational features into this game to make the gameplay experience viable. It's a little bit similar, though not completely, to the infamous trailer for Mighty Number 9, which is one of the most embarrassing things I've ever seen. It's this dude with this very, like, I want to be Z Frank, but I'm not, type, like, epic bacon sauce narwhal voice, making these really stale jokes, and then ending the like, trailer by saying, you'll make these enemies cry like an anime fan on prom night.
And make the bad guys cry like an anime fan on prom night.
As an anime fan who is engaged, fuck you, buddy. But also, when you're making a Mega Man tribute game, it's like, from a purely, like, cold-hearted businessman logistical standpoint, it's like, maybe don't go up to the people who are gonna be your audience for this and, like, karate chop them in the throat.
Oh, I don't know what you're talking about, man. My favorite part of the old Mega Man games was when some, like, out-of-touch marketeer condescended to me. That was, like, that was the bee's knees back in the day when I fought Bee's Knees Man and took his bee sneeze power.
I love when Mega Man turns to me and says, "You're an ugly loser virgin who smells bad." That really made me love playing those games back in the day.
Yeah, I love when Mega Man encountered me in real life and killed me and absorbed the girlfriend I didn't have at the time. That was sick.
That was so cool. Mega Man 7 is really underrated. But yeah, like all of these problems of his misuse of funds, his bizarre hills that he was dying on, his inability to work with others on a consistent basis, because he never seemed to work with other people for any consistent amount of time. There was I know it's hard to believe that a guy who used to make videos exploring every nook and cranny of the 3D model of Zero Suit Samus's body and calling himself like a video game babe inspector, which is like a coffee mug that your creepy uncle would have, is maybe not the best kind of guy to work with.
It's one of those things where it's like legitimately he feels like a dusty old artifact from that like earlier era of gaming, where it would be like, oh, you want the new Rayman game? Just so you know, he's got a huge cock. Anyway. The ad's on screen, by the way. That's real.
That's the thing. He's like if Leisure Suit Larry crawled out of the screen and started making his own game. The difference being that at least Leisure Suit Larry can talk to girls.
Yeah, exactly. Like I think like what's kind of crazy is that like, you know, the fetishes and stuff in this game and the like material of it, it seems like 1-to-1 without any abstraction directly from YandereDev's own proclivities. And considering that this is a game set in high school with high school girls, that's not okay at all.
Yeah, no, it's one of those things that just feels kind of gross and icky to talk about, which is why I want to put a pin in YandereDev for now, because once we've discussed a bit more of our 3 subjects in this video, we're going to do this overview and look at what the commonalities are. But from a sort of weird seedy sex game that never came to be because the dev went from enjoying Neon Genesis Evangelion to living it.
Some say he's still on the hallucination train, deep inside that orb.
He knows he let you down. He's been a fool to himself.
Boy, has he. But speaking of fools, why don't we talk about a certain mysterious Mr. Enter, and his eventual, in some form, given unto this world, by on high, growing around.
Growing Around currently exists as a large number of unproduced scripts and a self-published book. Now, let me say in advance, I haven't read the book, so I'm not going to speak on it here. And frankly, even if it's crap, I will be the first to say it is hard to even finish a crap book. Believe me, I've been trying for years. And that deserves respect. But we're not here to talk about that iteration of Growing Around. We're here to talk about what it was originally meant to be, which was a cartoon pilot and hopefully, Mr. Enter hoped, a cartoon series afterwards. Can you tell us a little bit about what Growing Around is and how we came up with the idea, Gus?
There was a one-off short on Cartoon Network or Nicktoons or one of the networks that was coming out with cartoons that had this bizarre concept of switching the children with the adults as like the parent and child dynamic of the family. And it was like called like Flip-Flopped or something. And it was not good and very uncomfortable. And Mr. Enter made a review about it saying much the same thing. This is not good and very uncomfortable. But then he went the extra step of, but what if it was good? And what if this became my thing forever? We don't know what switch flipped in Mysterious Mr. Enter's brain to cause him to be, like, really invested in this, but nonetheless, it did happen, and this was going to be a pilot, come hell or high water, and if the pilot didn't get picked up, he was going to write tons and tons of scripts in the meantime of all the episodes that could happen in this world.
Yeah, it's something that he early on described as kind of like BoJack Horseman for kids, which, if you know anything about BoJack Horseman or kids, will immediately raise alarm bells as to why this is perhaps a little bit of an ill-considered idea. Mr. Enter, I think, is a complicated figure. I definitely wouldn't say that I agree with many of his views on social issues. I think perhaps, I'll put it this way, John, from one guy has a lot of audio of him on the internet yelling about SpongeBob to another, maybe we should leave the discussion of policy to the people more educated than us in that matter. But
Very true. I will say this, though. Mr. Enter is maybe one of the most consistent YouTubers I've ever seen. And no, that's not really a compliment. It's that his style, his way of making videos has barely, in the broad strokes of it, changed at all since the inception of his channel. And really, it's just kind of new coats of paint, new avatars. And that, I think, factors into the way that he sees his own art, is that, like, listen, I can't be doing something wrong. What I've already got going on must be right. I guess I'll just double down and change minor aesthetic details of the thing until it works inexplicably.
I think one of the weirdest things about it, I guess, was his whole pitch was that he would remove the sort of weird Benjamin Button aspect of it and just have the roles flipped and substitute in his own characters. He did a crowdfunding campaign. He created some sort of promo art for it and wrote some scripts and did a pitch, and it immediately baffled people because people started asking questions about the strange implications of this world, which he was not super receptive to. And on top of that, people rightfully asked, like, okay, but do you have any experience in animation? Are you working with animators? Do you have, I believe, I don't have the exact figure in front of me, but he was asking for an exorbitant amount of money, I believe north of $200,000, which is a mental amount of money to ask for an animation when you yourself have never animated before.
But also, as you alluded to earlier, he had no desire to prove the concept either, because when it came to all of these questions that were being levied at the premise, the way that the episodes would be set up, all of these really important things, Mr. Enter's response was, I don't owe you anything. And he would say this after money was already involved, and he was committed to making a show that was literally about nothing other than the way that this world would work and how the people would live in it. Those questions, if they're not answered, there is no show. So it's kind of baffling that it's like, give me money. Okay, I didn't make the funding, but also, whatever. You're just gonna have to accept that I don't care enough about this premise that I care so much about that I'm making an entire thing about it. Deal with it. Deal with everything about this.
I'm sorry that I'm laughing. It's just there's something so almost admirable in its charlatanness of the kind of Sigma Ball's grain set nature of asking for someone for money. You take the money, they say, so what will I get for this money? And you say, I don't owe you anything, and walk away.
Yeah, it's, I think, Mr. Enter has about as much experience with SpongeBob as we do, so he was just definitely channeling a little Eugene Krabs in that move, in that power move right there.
Yeah, no, it truly is, and I think if you watched some of Growing Around, if there was some of it to watch, and didn't enjoy it, he would do the Mr. Krabs style, rewinding it out of your brain, because you don't get it if you don't appreciate it.
Oh, yeah, exactly, erasing it from memory. It's honestly, what we got here with, there being just kind of a book at the end of all of this, which was very much not what was promised. It's very Krabby the Clown of, hey, kids, Keep on spending money on my stuff and support me.
Yeah, and it's particularly bizarre because, feel free to correct me on this. So, Indiegogo, I believe, is one of those crowdfunding websites where even if you don't reach your goal, you still get to take home what you earned. And that's such a bizarre thing because it's like, so you still took home 10 G's and wrote a book for it. Like, it's the same as all of the money that YandereDev, like, hoovered out of people's pockets in the process of this, and it didn't deliver. And it's like, at a point, when is it just stealing? Like, if you paid, like, a local pizza place, and they just didn't bring you the pizza, you wouldn't be like, oh, well, guess it just is how it is, you know?
Yeah, well, and couple that if, like, the pizza place, while they're not delivering the pizza to you, and you've, like, overpaid for the pizza, they start very, like, publicly saying, like, tons of, like, troubling, weird things, and you ask them about the pizza, and you're like, there's nothing wrong with the pizza! Why would you think that there's something wrong with the pizza? You're what's wrong with the pizza, in fact.
And then later on, you discover that they posted pictures to their social media of them eating the pizza that they were meant to give to you.
And then, in the mail, in a greasy envelope, 3 weeks later, you get a single slice of pepperoni. Enjoy, fucko!
It's just like, I told this story in our last episode of SpongeBob Boys, which, if you're curious about it, is mine and Gus's show, where we have a revolving door series of guests, and we random number generate episodes of modern SpongeBob and just react to them. But it's like that weird British teenager that came and squeezed my pizza slice and then told me it should taste better now because it was his birthday. Just all these merchants of destruction out there. But yeah, Mr. Enter, much like YandereDev, the whole project was rocked with extremely public petty infighting, inabilities to take critiques from the audience that just led to combative relationships with the exact people that you would need support from, and just drama and poor priorities consuming everything.
And I do find it darkly ironic that a man who has probably multiple top 10 worst theme songs of all time in cartoons also stood by and produced maybe one of the worst theme songs of anything, sung by an actual child, it seems.
Which is really bizarre because, again, much like YandereDev, it's like, buddy, don't make the theme song before you've made the show it's a theme for. It's again that weird kind of earwormy Miss Officer and Mr. Truffles song that now just feels like a haunting epitaph to these doomed, overambitious ideas.
No, genuinely, John Enter, you owe Angela Anaconda an apology.
Well, yeah, because as the really excellent Mara video on mixed media and early age internet access said, Angela Anaconda, for all of its faults, was trying something interesting and using some weird and innovative techniques.
No, it's true. It was ahead of its time in a way, and we can resent it because it was the first segment of the, like, American adaptation of the
Digimon movie.
Yeah, exactly. Which was 3 movies pressed into one. Man, Digimon has had a strange relationship with localization.
Do you know what's funny about the Digimon movie?
Oh, yeah?
Doug Walker actually did a review of the Digimon movie in his Nostalgia Critic persona with Jacob Chapman back in the day. And I think this is the perfect excuse to talk about... Okay, I need to tell the audience this because this is going to ruin your life, just like it ruined mine. Because I can't say Doug Walker normally these days because at some point my stupid OCD brain reformatted that name to Doug Walker. Like, you know, a kind of Italian-American Joker goon being like, hey boss, it's Doug Walker. And I think Doug Walker also sounds like a weird sort of Dr. Seuss beast as well.
Well, yeah, because it's like, if you find that, like, cave between the, like, potted ferns at the Olive Garden, and you go too far into it, and you start to, like, smell this, like, cheesy smell, and you hear the footsteps and the stomping, and then the dread screeching, you may be encountering Doug Walker.
If you've made it this far into the video, please comment Doug Walker down below. We need this movement to spread.
I can't wait to do the video editing and then, like, put that phonetically in text.
Yeah, here's how it's spelled. Look at the screen right now. Doug Walker. And you're never going to be able to think of him as anything else. I'm deeply sorry. Or maybe you're less mentally ill than me and you'll be unaffected. Who's to say? All right.
Anyway, let's talk about Doug Walker.
Okay, so it must be said, before we get into any of this, that a shocking thing, because I think it's more of a testament to how piss poor this rogues gallery is than to any particular skill that Doug has, but Doug is the most accomplished and professional of any of the creators on this list. I think it is only by...
You're right that says something.
It does. It is less by their inability to manifest in any form, and more by their inability to live up to Doug's or the audience's own expectations, or to continue into any form of longevity that we can call demo reel and pop quiz hotshots failures. But it is undeniable that when looking at the context of the rest of this video, they are more successful failures than growing around in Yandere Simulator.
Absolutely. Like, you know, we can think of a lot of Doug Walker's failures as, like, the mutant, multi-winged contraptions that the Wright brothers built before they, like, got their plane off the ground. Though it would be more like they built a working plane and then decided, no, you know what? This one needs 6 wings and they're going to be arranged like a biblically accurate angel. That's how that's going to work.
It would be like if the Wright brothers were making their weird, janky planes in the mid-90s.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, well, okay, these kind of work, but really you're not doing yourself any favor by presenting these to the world. And such was the case with Demo Reel, which was a, like, flat-out replacement for the Nostalgia Critic. And if we lived in a different timeline, we could imagine that Doug Walker is no longer the Nostalgia Critic, and Demo Reel is on its 5th season. But we don't live in that timeline, do we, Henry?
We really don't. So, we've touched on this briefly before in a video essay that I wrote and Gus voiced and produced back in the day about The Review Must Go On, which is still, despite its flaws, in my opinion, incontestably the best thing Doug has ever made. Demo Reel was, by all accounts, a project that was very personal to Doug. It was his first attempt at review-based, serialized storytelling. It was, if you've not watched that or any of the videos that Lady Emily or other commentators have done, a series about an amateur film production team headed by Doug's own character, Donnie Dupre, that were attempting to make their Sweded, in the Be Kind Rewind sense, versions of popular films, done in a very similar kind of janky, lo-fi, green screen style to a lot of Doug's old clipless reviews that he did back in the day. And while it is undeniably more narratively ambitious than a lot of the stuff he's done, it suffered from a lot of Doug's classic mistakes of difficulty properly working a camera and taking sound, kind of obnoxious, played-out reference-based humor that then sort of dips into weird, very tonally dissonant melodrama. Like, it's a strange watch, and a lot of its more skit segments are particularly tough to get through.
Yeah, I think the core of what makes a lot of, like, Doug Walker's narrative stuff, and this refers to, like, the old Channel Awesome collaboration movies as well, is that there is this tendency to take nothing seriously and be irreverent and goofy until it's time for an almost, like, Family Guy-esque sit-down, slow zoom, calm music. This is the most important, most sentimental, most powerful, most iconic, most ageless, I'm quoting something else now, thing that we've ever seen. And it never sticks the landing because all those other jokes become like the body of the thing, and many of them are not funny. And then when all of a sudden we switch gears to, actually, don't laugh. This is important. We're like, oh, were we meant to be laughing before? Were we meant to be goofing before? And now we have to put everything on pause. You gotta pay attention to this. You gotta take it seriously. The Nostalgia Critic movies were one thing, because the stakes were only as high as, like, internet reviewers being wiped from, like, a space war. Whereas, dealing with actual ramifications of, like, Hollywood acting and what the industry does to people in their lives in demo reel is really dissonant from, look, it's the Joker doing a rap.
Yeah, which is particularly bizarre because it would be Malcolm in Joker makeup with Doug's very poor Heath Ledger's Joker impression dubbed over him. Baffling. But you hit the nail on the head there, Gus, of it does end up just feeling very mawkish and strange, that it's a mix of the most, like, lowbrow, like low-hanging fruit that you can imagine comedy-wise, and then gets into, like, some of the most serious things that real people who are, suffering from certain demons, you can probably guess what we're dancing around here, go through, and it ends up leaving a really bad taste in your mouth, and as a result, the backlash, the mix of backlash and apathy that resulted on this forced Doug to kind of end it after one season and go back to the Nostalgia Critic with his tail between his legs. And there's a lot of ink that's been spilt on that matter, but it was around this same time that Pop Quiz Hot Shots happened.
The thing about Pop Quiz Hot Shots is that in comparison to Demo Reel, which it seems like at least had some kind of creative artistic vision, Pop Quiz Hot Shots really feels like a money laundering scheme. Like, it has the energy of something where, like, look, we're just gonna say that an amount of money that was given to us was spent here, and that's all people really need to know. The product itself doesn't need to reflect this, because what is the product itself? It is a game show with a copious amount of movie quotes, occasional dissonant real-world historical questions, and baffling bonus games that don't seem to affect the results of the game at all. Like one where they play with the little fish in a little fast plastic fish in a pond.
Yeah, I described it off mic as basically being like the kind of internet show equivalent of a mafia front business. Like, you have that story, Gus, of, like, going into that restaurant and being like, oh, okay, this thing clearly exists as, like, a way to funnel money. Yeah, go tell that story.
Can I explain that? Yeah, so there was this place, and, like, my God, I hope this is, like, long enough that, like, even mentioning the name wouldn't get me in trouble. But, yeah, whatever.
Let's maybe not mention the name. You don't want to get your legs broke.
Yeah, exactly. Well, anyway, there was this cafe, and my family was, like, in New York because we were going to see a baseball game, and we had, like, we were sitting down and we were looking at the menus and we're like, okay, it's pretty bare bones, but we'll order something. And so my mom orders a biscotti. You gotta get the biscotti at the Italian diner. You could get, so what comes to our table is an oatmeal raisin cookie on a plate. Meanwhile, I'm like, I'm gonna order a root beer float. What comes to me is not, in fact, a root beer float, but a can of mug root beer, unopened. And so I look at the menu again, and I'm like, oh, my bad. It says here that the root beer float goes good with their vanilla gelato. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, gelato, of course. That's the ice cream part of the float. Even though a float is, like, the sum total of the root beer and the ice cream, let's just pretend for a second that you gotta order the gelato separately and that they wouldn't tell you. So I ordered the gelato, and they're out of gelato!
These guys must be the mafia, because this shit is criminal.
Exactly. So, literally after we were served nothing, we left. And since then, we had this like sort of running gag of like, okay, so that must have been a front business. And a lot of these other places in New York, when we faced a similar sort of flim-flam scenario, we would recount this experience. And yeah, Pop Quiz Hot Shots is that in the form of an internet show.
Yeah, because it's like, okay, no way $90,000 went into producing this. We can only assume that Doug Walker got a brand new Lamborghini that week as well when that show was being produced. He rolled up to the studio with like 50-inch rims.
There's also the whole thing about like Brad Jones, the eternal lackey that he is, creating some kind of like narrative inside of the show, which was dropped in 2 episodes when they nonetheless had Doug take back over as host of this, and nobody batted an eye because nobody was paying attention to this because what were they meant to?
Yeah, it's a bummer because we both used to be fans of the Cinema Snob before he became Doug Walker's Theon Greyjoy, but it is undeniably just an uncomfortable sit.
It is. Again, yeah, it's like, I love some old Cinema Snob videos. I love. The content is great. I've even seen Hooker with a Heart of Gold, which is like the sort of like indie exploitation parody movie that Brad Jones directed, and it's probably better than any of Doug Walker's movies. Definitely better than Demo Reel, but yeah, Brad Jones is a man with agency, and he made wrong choices on who he was gonna pin his future prospects to.
Yep, and that is what that is. But what is completely undeniable here is that neither of these shows performed like they hoped they would. They were quickly and quietly abandoned to return to the old Nostalgia Critic formula, and despite it being commendable that they were at least released in some form, I think it is still fair to say that they are failed projects. So that's all she wrote on those 3, and it leaves us with the matter of saying, okay, what went wrong? Because it is tremendously easy to look at a scenario like this and think, well, these went wrong because these were weird guys. YandereDev, weird guy. Mr. Enter, weird guy. Doug Walker, weird guy.
The weird guy.
Yeah, and this like little triple hat trick of weird guys, it's easy to assume that it was because of like unique issues that these guys have that these things didn't pan out how anyone hoped. But not only do I not believe that is true, I think it's also a deeply unhelpful way to think. I think especially for people who are online creators or people who might want to financially support online creators at different points, it's tremendously dangerous to assume that this kind of thing could never happen to you out of some like very misguided belief that you're a different class of person to any of these people. So let's take a look here at the commonalities. I think one of the big ones is that, perhaps with the exception of some of the specifics of Demo Reel especially, a lot of these suffered from having immensely public productions, which lent themselves to being locked into certain paths out of a need to save face, rather than quietly making, the kind of dog's body part of it, to borrow fucking Joss Whedon's term, in the dark and then going public once you had something worth seeing, which immediately led to points of contention for both YandereDev and Mr. Enter.
Yeah, and when there are these points of contention based on like what you're doing publicly, and then there's the double down of no, I have to say that like, these points of contention aren't as bad, that this is the product that was promised, and even in response to like whether you keep things the same or change them in response to the audience's concerns, you are in some ways spoiling the product or showing that it is ill-planned.
Exactly. It's a real damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. And this is something me and Gus have known for a while, and it's why, especially with the most recent projects we've been involved in, which is, as Gus mentioned earlier, the Kingmaker Histories, Meg's steampunk fantasy audio drama that's been out for 3 seasons, and mine and Addison's like cyberpunk beat 'em up audio drama Killjam Triple X, which has had a handful of episodes out and is releasing weekly. We stayed very like mum about these things in the actual production stages because at the end of the day, I think as a lot of us have learned at this point, hype can be kind of a poisonous thing where even if it doesn't directly influence the production, in any direction as we saw with YandereDev and Mr. Enter, it's also, I think, dangerous to take too long a run up, to build expectations that are too deep or too specific, because it's the same as, often mythical, unfinished things, whether it's like PT or some season 2 of Firefly, even if they came out now, they'd never be what you hoped after all of the hype.
And on top of that, nothing kills hype faster than this adversarial relationship with the audience of like, you'll like it, you'll get it, and you'll like it. Even if it's like, disgusting liver on a platter, it's what you already paid for. And that's when we'll get into the idea of the funding and how that changes the way people approach their projects.
It's true, because one of the biggest ways in which literally all 3 of these guys fell flat is that they took people's money before they had less than 100% certainty that they could give people what they're paying for. Like, one thing I will say, and this is not to like blow smoke up our own arse, because it's just out of a raw fear of us falling into these same potholes, we have never ever asked for anyone's money for something that hasn't already existed.
Both of us have done this, but I know that I have personally paid people out of my own pocket for projects that didn't get released, but the people involved still deserve to get rewarded for their hard work. I gained nothing from those experiences, monetarily wise, because it was not about, taking people's money. It wouldn't have helped me or the product or anybody involved in it if a bunch of money was put towards something that didn't exist.
Yeah, and it's the same with even the Patreons that we run for our different projects, like this channel or like Kingmaker. It's things where we're very clear about what you're getting. They are things that we have made sure with them that it's acknowledged that you're supporting continued production of the show. And in the case of the Wanna Patreon, anyone who signs up for only a single $1 a month is looking at around 70 hours of content that's already there waiting for them. Because frankly, when you ask for someone's money for something that doesn't exist, you don't have a right to tell them you don't owe them anything, as we were hinting at with Mr. Enter earlier, because you quite literally, legally, monetarily do, unless you are willing to give complete refunds, which the more ethical shutdown projects out there have done, and good on them. Your audience aren't just your audience anymore. They're your shareholders. They're your bosses, almost. And it changes your relationship with them and the piece.
And like shareholders, you can't just change the entire nature of the flagship of your company on a whim and still expect the same amount of support, which is what happened with Doug Walker and Demo Reel and Pop Quiz Hotshots.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. And it's why we are, and frankly always have been with our own projects, big believers in don't overshare, whether it's with your own like weird personal life stuff, which consistently came up in these issues here, or if it's showing every single step of the process along the way while also draining more and more money. To be honest, I think YandereDev is the most egregious of all of them, because he was doing this on an active patron model. People were paying him every month to not work. It could at least be said of Mr. Enter and Dogwalker that at least they just took a lump sum rather than continuing to bleed people.
Oh, yeah, and crucially, Mr. Enter, had been operating his YouTube channel, and we can say what we will about that, but the audience that has stuck by with that is still getting the same old Mr. Enter they always had, and Doug Walker went back to being the same old Nostalgia Critic that they always got, but YandereDev's it's in his literal name. This was the only thing he had, and he didn't do it, and all his money, the bulk of it, was coming from the, expectation that this would exist. The whole pretense of him being a public online figure was that Yandere Simulator would be his claim to fame. And it didn't happen, and what we are left with is, the husk of what could have been. And this trail of disappointed people and false demos of something that won't exist ever.
Yeah, and because consistent things come in threes, whether it is strange internet weirdos or advice, my third kind of tenet to put on this thing, in addition to keep it in the dark until you've got something worth showing, and don't take people's money until you know that you can give their money's worth. My third thing would be, my advice, the creator side of advice to this is, don't go outside of what your resources, personnel, and skill level would allow you to do, because you're setting yourself up for disaster, whether it's by feature creep or scope creep, or simply in the Mr. Entered case, just not being an animator or knowing animators and deciding to make an animation. And I would say from the audience side, if someone is asking for your money to make a thing, at the very least, check to see that they have successfully made this kind of thing before. Because if not, you're throwing that money down a hole.
Exactly, because there is purchasing a good or a service, and then there is giving an offering, a tithe, if you will, to the potential of something that could exist. Just hang back and be cautious, because, we don't have the money to burn that people seemingly used to on all of these different scam internet Kickstarters for movies that did mostly not exist.
It's true, and I think this keeping inside your means, which is not to say don't be narratively ambitious, or to have, cool out there concepts, to take an example from what we're doing, the reason that the Kingmaker Histories and Killjam XXX are both, fiction podcasts, is because we realize that with the resources and the people that we have, that is the best and most expedient way to release a complete version of this. Meg's an animator. We know animators, we know artists, but we're also not the kind of people who would think, let's, with the skeleton crew we've got, do what takes huge established studios, hundreds of personnel, and hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars to make even a half-decent example of ourselves, and in the process release something crap. It's really good to take stock of your skills, your capabilities, and what you have on your hands, and think, okay, well, how can I make the best version of this with what I've got? Because maybe at some point in the future, if it goes well, you can parlay this into other ideas and other mediums. But it is best to start to use a kind of weird fantasy metaphor, within the borders of your own little creative kingdom, because there's less chance that you'll be embarrassed then.
Exactly. And again, like, that's a rule that we hold ourselves to, but it's also something that we have seen not just like big internet known celebrities not follow. We have been approached out of the blue by various people, one of whom was like, yeah, I'm gonna make a John Wick like on $5,000, and we were meant to, like, you know, turn that into something that worked. And obviously that is impossible. You cannot do nearly any of those shots or that level of, like,
production value.
Yeah, you just can't get it done, especially when you don't even know that many people who can do the kind of stunts that I believe there was like one guy who kind of knows karate was signed on as talent for this one. Then there was this other project that came out of nowhere and was like, hey, this project guaranteed 1 million hits. Just pay me and I'll make this for you. Like, this is the kind of stuff that we get because we've put ourselves out there. And yeah, like, we're a little bit skeptical sometimes of these various things, but I would say, based on the taxonomy we've given in this video, that skepticism is a healthy one, and it's kept people from taking us for a ride.
Exactly, like that last guy you were talking about, we won't name names, because, you know, who knows? We've all done embarrassing things in the past, which we'll get to in a second, that we've then grown up from, but it was a classic example of something that basically broke all of the rules we've set here of, like, hey, here's the idea, here's an absurdly long script I wrote for it, you just give me the money, despite the fact that the guy hadn't made anything in this medium before, which made it a sense of, like, buddy, if we were, like, big dick ballers who could give you a load of money, like, if you don't know what you're doing, as is the case of $90,000 to make something that looks as god-awful as Pop Quiz Hotshots, you couldn't turn any amount of money into a decent final product.
Yeah, no, literally. Well, okay, so, you know, we've sort of, I guess, conquered the world in terms of bringing down these people from our highfalutin YouTube video where we can control the horizontal and the vertical, but we gotta get humble.
Yeah.
And we gotta talk about our own failures. Yeah. Whew. So, those of you who are already patrons will not be strangers to these concepts, but those of you who are here on the channel, this may be new to you. But yeah, this was around the same time. I think it was like...
This was 5 years ago.
5 years ago, yeah. And we both wrote these pilots at the same time. And I do want to say, because this is important for context, this is what Henry and I were working on while Meg was polishing up the pilot for what would become The Kingmaker Histories, which is our 3-season steampunk audio drama, alternate history, tons of magic systems, endearing characters, real voice actors, real voices, amazing sound design by Meg themselves. It is a fantastic work of art, and Henry and I...
We were off farting in the woods.
Yeah, exactly. You know how, like, when an anime character goes to train on a mountain and they become stronger? Henry and I were farting under a hill, is what we were doing.
And slowly passing out from the depleting oxygen.
Yeah, in separate hills, but we would, like, you know, come back and we would exchange the wafting, nauseous nos of
Can we end this metaphor? I'm worried just a robot's gonna show up.
Oh no, not him. Yeah, okay, you're right. We should move on, because my thing did have robots in it, or something like robots. So what if Neon Genesis Evangelion took place at Disney World and Mega Mans were, like, mass produced by the government to fight the Avas? And also there's like a business lady, and she's super thick. And that's how you get Manic, Tipsy, Nightmare Quotient, aka MTNQ, the... Huh? of science fiction.
I mean, to be fair, Gus, at least you didn't, like me, think, what if you made a workplace comedy about a snuff film ring, which is how you get the deeply uncomfortable and unappealing sick puppies, which was my pilot. And by the way, this isn't just going to be me and Gus, like, just coyly hinting at this. If you want to read these two, like, baffling, like, screenwriting abortions, we've linked them both in the description. They are unappealing. They are bad. They show that we were in a weird state at the time, and they are things that we don't feel at all represent who we are or what our kind of creative ethos is these days, but they're there and we made them, and there's no denying that.
Yeah, they're the kind of, like, unproduced scripts that you write in some kind of feverish haze, and then you wake up on a pile of garbage in an alleyway 3 states over, and you're like, what did I do? What is this? And then you read it and you're like, this is bad. This is awful.
Definitely do not read either of them if you are under 18. They are both really explicit in a very uncomfortable way.
Oh yeah, there is, like, you know, sex stuff out the wazoo. There's lots of violence in both of these.
If we're making them sound fun, we're sorry, they're not. They're really not.
No, it really is one of those things where, like, I think your main characters in this sick puppies thing were like a like insane masked woman who was like obsessed with like horror films and slasher stuff, and like a total like fangirl who, like, I don't know if she was meant to be like a sort of like self-deprecating self-insert in some sense, but it felt like that a little bit. And then the other main woman was, like, the classic, like, I'm not weird about women because this woman is introduced sitting on a toilet and eating a hamburger.
Yeah, that was certainly a thing I wrote. Like, that's the thing. And in the same way that I think yours, like, drew on that sort of, like, these are all the cool bits of, like, anime and things like that, I think they were both us just doing very bizarre, very self-indulgent, very, in much the way that we've discussed with these different creators today, drawing on our own foibles and where we were mentally at the time after another one of another one of our failures that we kind of, much like Doug Walker, we never made more than, like, a few episodes of Less is More, which was one of our earlier audio dramas, season 2, because, again, it ended up just being way too ambitious. We outstripped our means and all got burnt out on it, which is why we limit ourselves to shorter seasons on things now. Again, we tell you all of these rules because they are written in blood, including our own. The one thing that I do take a great deal of pride in is we've never had messy public productions and we've never run off with anybody's money.
Exactly. Like, at the end of the day, that is really the best thing that we could say about these 2 unproduced pilots that we've linked in the description, is that these didn't harm anybody except for show the retroactive harm that must have been done to us at some point in our lives for us to produce these.
Absolutely, and feel free to bleep bits of this if you need to. There is a, like, tit fucking gunfight sequence that is truly baffling, and the main, like, hero of it can fire tiny snowmen out of his fingertips, and that's his superpower. Like, again, we were in weird places with these, but if you have read through those, please do us the kindness of the second-hand psychic damage that knowing you reading them has caused to us, and go check out the Kingmaker Histories and Killjam XXX. You don't even need to read anything. You can listen to them on Spotify, on YouTube, on Apple Podcasts, on Podbean, and see how far we've come in those 5 years, because goddamn is the second-hand embarrassment of my own past self killing me. I've got a fever, and the only cure is knowing that you guys listen to stuff that we're proud of.
Oh man, you know, it's times like these when I look back on that and I feel a little dead inside. And that's why we are not alive, baby!
We'll be seeing you
In the near future.